Hey folks, JodoCast again, and against everybody's recommendations and my own better judgment, I went and bought a Mega Centurion. Everyone's told me how crap they are, but I still wanted to get one and see what that I could do with it, see what sort of mods I could do, if I could get a reasonable improvement out of it, and I want to do some cosmetic mods to it as well. So I will get about pulling this apart and we'll have a look at the internals and see what we can do, and I'll be back shortly. Well, I almost forgot a very important step of the process, and that's putting it over the chronograph. So I've got it just temporarily set up so that we can put it across the chrono and see what it does unmodified. Looks like the average is going to be around 70 feet per second. Alright, so let's see if we can improve that. Okay, so this is what the guts of it looks like. Looks like fun. Gearbox, what have you, I guess. I'm going to try to leave as much in place as possible. Okay, that's the lever for stopping you from being able to put your magazine in without the front attachment. So I might hot glue that in place perhaps, so that I can put it in if I want at any time. And I might file down these little barbs that hold the front gun in place as well, so that it can be removed as well. What else have we got? There's obviously the air restrictor inside there that I'll pull out, and we'll have a look at what can be done with this tube as far as maybe upgrading the spring or what have you. Alright, I'll get into it, see what I can find out, and I'll be back. Okay, so to make the front section detachable, all I've done is just file off the back of the little clip there. As you can see, it's now sloped in both directions, and this is the one out of the other shell. You can see what it looked like beforehand. So basically that flat back edge, I'm just putting a bevel on that as well and tapering it back the other direction, so that it'll snap in one way and hopefully snap back out the other. Yeah, so all you have to do is undo the screws at the front of the plunger tube and breech assembly, and you pop that open, and so you pop this open, and out pops your air restrictor assembly. Now I've gone in with the Dremel and taken out the actual post as well. The post is like the same size as a normal dart post, which is ridiculous because the hole in the back of the Mega Darts are enormous, so it wouldn't even be touching the edges, so I couldn't see the point in even having it in there. So I just ground it out just to make sure that there's absolutely maximum airflow going through. Now I'm going to move on to the breech section and see what I can do with that, as far as maybe trying to get a heavier spring into it. So I'll see what I can organise, and I'll be back. While we're in the neighbourhood as well, I hot glued the little tag open that stops you from putting your magazine in without the front gun attached, and I've filed back the edge on both of these little tabs, so hopefully the front section will be able to be clipped on and clipped off relatively easy. But we'll check that out once we get the whole gun back together. Alright. Okay, so through persistence, a little bit of technique, and some boiling water, what I did was around this seam, around the front leading edge here, is I basically ran a Stanley knife blade around it just to break the seal of the glue that you could actually visibly see. Not too heavy because you don't want to cut right through the plastic, but just basically run it around with a little bit of pressure just to break the seal of the glue right around the outside there. Then I immersed the whole end into a cup of boiling water, left it sitting there for a little while. Then, using a technique where basically I pulled the plunger tube forward and grabbed hold of the plunger tube and this end section here, and just slowly moving it in like a circular pattern, just gently, and pulling it forward at the same time, so just slowly sort of working it. I managed to break the seal on the solvent weld and have been able to gain access to the internals of the plunger tube. Now, I don't recall having seen anyone else get to that point so far, so hopefully that's something new, and may inspire others to see what else can be done. So now what I will look at doing is improving the seal on the O-ring, obviously, and see what we can do about maybe replacing this spring with a heavier spring. I'll have a look through my my selection and see if I've got anything that's going to suffice, and I'll let you know what I come back with. See you shortly. Okay, so what these guys should have named this blaster is the Phoenix, because essentially it has to die to be reborn. Once you've got the plunger assembly out of the tube, essentially what you have to do is cut the tube in half in order to gain access to the spring. Now, what they've done though is there is actually a tube up the centre which screws in to both the fittings at each end. So that will essentially hold it back together. So what I'm going to do is, using an old piece of barrel, is cut a sleeve to fit inside this piece. What I'll do is cut off probably a 2-inch section, put a slit down one side and just widen the slit so that it allows it to collapse enough to just slip perfectly inside that tube, and then I will actually glue that into place to give it some extra strength. But this actual smaller section through the middle screws into both the ends and will hold it all together anyway. So but what I'm going to do is, I had this larger orange Modworks spring, and what I'm toying with is the idea of is double springing it, basically slipping this one over the top of the other one. It'll fit inside the main plunger tube, okay. So I guess the test is whether it will fit inside this end piece, because if it doesn't, just took the rubber stoppers off, then I may not be able to do that. Oh, and it does fit. So there we go. So I will be using that as a secondary spring to try and give this thing a little bit more oomph. All right, I will assemble that. I'll make my little sleeve. I'll glue it into one side and show you guys that, and then we'll go about reassembling, putting it together, and seeing what sort of improvement we've been able to get out of it. Okay, I'll be back. Cheers. Another thing I'm going to be doing is getting rid of these vent holes in the side here. So what I've actually done is stuck some duct tape down the inside of the vents, stuck that to the back of them, and I'm going to fill them with a epoxy resin and smooth that off. And so I'll do that as well and show you that once I've done it. Okay, so here's the plunger tube. without a spring on it at all at the moment because I haven't glued it together yet. But just to show you what I've done is made a sleeve to go down the inside, which is basically just a section of barrel that I've then, as you can see, I've made a cut down the side of. And it compresses, will slip down in there and then expands out to exactly the right size. So what I'll do is rough up, I've already roughed up the internal edges of the tube. I'll rough up the outside of this, then apply some epoxy resin to it and slip it in both sides once I've got the springs in place, obviously, and then we'll glue the whole lot back together. And obviously the springs are under pressure, but then when I put the screw into the other end here, it will hold it all together while the glue cures and makes it nice and strong. So we'll be back. Okay, what I've done is I've doubled up the spring on the rod here. As you can see, I've glued it back together with the sleeve inside. I have put some buffer behind the O-ring to give the O-ring a better seal, and it gets a much better seal. And I used epoxy to seal up those vents on the tube, so they are now sealed, so it gets much better compression. I can already feel that there's going to be a lot more pressure behind it, and it gets much better compression. So we will now go about reassembling it and throw a few test shots over the chronograph, and let's see what we've been able to achieve. Alright, so the tube assembly is back together, vents all sealed. I used an ABS solvent type glue to stick that back together, pop the guide screw back in, so you can see down the guts of it there. There's a hell of a lot more pressure in it, that's for sure. So we will put this thing back together and try a few test shots and see how it fares. Alright, we'll be back once it's all assembled. Alright, so all the internals are all back together, giving them a bit of a lubricate, etc. So now we'll put the outer shell back on and give it a few test shots, see how it goes. Okay, the Mega Centurion is all back together, and it's had the air restrictor removed, the additional spring fitted, etc. Now I've test fired it and it fires. It sounds pretty damn aggressive. Now what I'm going to do is we'll put it back over the chronometer and see if there's been any increase. Now I'll run 6 shots over the chronometer and see what FPS we get. Well, it's fairly consistent. I'll work out what the average was over the 6 darts, and we'll compare that to what we got from the unmodified version and see if the mods have worked and if they were worthwhile. You can slip the barrel on at the front and have it full length. It requires a bit of force, but you can actually remove the barrel as well. Just like that. So you don't want the thing falling off, but so You know, it needs a little bit of pressure, but yeah, it's now essentially removable as well. Alright, so that's stage 1 of my modified Mega Centurion. Cheers.